Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and man-eating sharks. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at the undisputed greatest shark movie of all time, Jaws. This Steven Spielberg classic takes place in the fictional New England small town of Amity, where tourists come far and wide to enjoy its beaches. Too bad a big old great white has decided to set up shop in Amity, and the town's mayor would rather pretend it isn't happening. Sheriff Martin Brody enlists the help of an educated oceanographer and a fanatical shark hunter to kill the beast before it can eat any more swimmers. Jaws is based on the novel by aquatic monster extraordinaire Peter Benchley. He was actually a struggling writer at the time, and Jaws is the novel that broke big for him, staying on the best-selling charts for 44 weeks. Universal producers Richard Zanuck and David Brown were captivated by the story and purchased the film rights before it was even published. They considered John Sturges and Dick Richards, but of course landed on Steven Spielberg to direct. This was only Spielberg's second feature film, as he was just coming off Sugarland Express, and the 26-year-old was eager for the opportunity. Benchley wrote the first draft of the screenplay, and Spielberg's friend Carl Gottlieb ended up penning the final version, as well as acting in the film. Gottlieb was essential to adding a little bit of comedy to the film, as well as fleshing out the characters and their motivations. But there were a ton of writers who had uncredited contributions, including John Milius, Matthew Robbins, Hal Barwood, Howard Sackler, and Robert Shaw. There's actually a lot of drama in regards to who came up with what in Jaws. It's a bit of a shark measuring contest, if you catch my drift. While the actors in Jaws are a lot of familiar faces, Spielberg wanted to avoid any huge movie stars so that it really felt like just a small town community dealing with this issue. The first role to be cast was Ellen Brody, played by Lorraine Gary from 1941 and Car Wash. Roy Schneider from The French Connection and The 7-Ups ended up landing the role of Martin Brody after proving to Spielberg he could do more than just play a tough guy. Murray Hamilton from The Amityville Horror and The Graduate was chosen to play Mayor Larry Vaughn. 9 days before filming, neither Hooper or Quint had been cast. It took a lot of convincing from family and producers, but Robert Shaw from A Man for All Seasons and The Sting ended up taking the role of Quint. A ton of actors were considered for Hooper, but it ended up going to Richard Dreyfuss from American Graffiti and Stand By Me. There are a ton of other great performances in Jaws, and a lot of the minor background characters are played by residents from Martha's Vineyard, where the film was shot. It was chosen due to its small town aesthetic and shallow waterfront, which made underwater shots more viable. Cinematographer Bill Butler from The Conversation and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest devised a new submersible camera box and stabilizing rig capable of remaining steady despite the tide. I haven't even talked about the damn shark yet. Producers originally wanted to train a real great white shark for the movie, but luckily someone decided that was a stupid idea. 3 different pneumatically powered sharks were designed by Joseph Alves and built by Raleigh Harper's Motion Picture and Equipment. The sharks were of course named after Steven Spielberg's lawyer because they were a pain in the ass. Technical issues with the sharks, amongst a bunch of other reasons, caused Jaws to be a really difficult film to shoot, and it ended up quickly going over its $4 million budget and jumped all the way to $9 million. I seriously can't go through all the crazy stories that I found, but just go skim through the Jaws Wikipedia page, there's some really funny shit in there. Jaws opened in theaters and broke all sorts of records, taking down The Godfather as the highest grossing movie of all time, eventually grossing $472 million. Jaws was the movie that turned blockbuster into a common phrase, and it really changed the way that big budget movies functioned. It was mostly met with positive reviews, with Roger Ebert giving it a rare 4 stars. Critics loved the fleshed out characters, rich themes, and innovative scares. It is widely considered a masterpiece and one of the greatest films of all time, and it currently has a 98 and 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. This was the film that put Steven Spielberg on the map, and its influence on filmmaking and just general culture is immense. There's not a ton I can say about Jaws that hasn't been said before, and I know y'all are here to see Bruce and not me, so it's probably time we go pay him a visit. I hope you have a bigger boat, because we're watching Jaws. The movie opens underwater with that badass score by John Williams as we join some young adults around a beachfront bonfire. They like guitars, the devil's lettuce, and in the case of Tommy and Chrissy, each other. They frolic away from the group and Chrissy wants to go skinny dipping. Drunk-ass Tommy can't keep up with the naked speed swimmer and he passes out on shore trying to undress. Chrissy starts to get tugged by an unseen underwater force and screams as she's violently jerked around. She tries to hang onto a buoy, but her screams turn to silence as she's pulled under for good, and the only witness is unconscious. Martin and Ellen Brody are waking up the next morning and quickly get to making fun of the locals' Amity accents.
In the yard, not too far from the car.
Brody has no time to deal with his roughhousing son Michael or his adorable son Sean, as he's rushing off to investigate a body found on the beach. For some reason, Tommy is bringing him to see the body, and we learn that the Brodys recently moved to Amity from New York. Deputy Hendricks looks almost as torn up as Chrissy, who's getting munched on by some crabs. Brody ignores the usual small-town problems he's called for, as he knows they're dealing with a shark attack. He tells his secretary Polly to have any water activities cancelled and wants the beaches closed. The beaches have never been closed, so Brody hops over to the nearest craft store to make some signs. He puts Hendricks in charge of the art project while he rushes to stop some swimming Boy Scouts who are already at the beach. Mayor Larry Vaughn catches word of the attack and catches up to Brody on a ferry. Vaughn and his bitch-ass posse don't want the beaches closed because they're Amity's big tourist attraction during the summer, especially the 4th of July weekend. They even have the town doctor in their pocket who now says Chrissy died of a boating accident. Vaughn warns that he'll only create a panic, and Brody reluctantly agrees. But that doesn't stop him from vigilantly watching the water, and he's scared by a couple of false alarms. A bunch of kids swim out and a dog owner can't find his good boy. That dreaded underwater music starts up and it hones in on a raft. The child, Alex Kittner, thrashes around in a bloody fountain and is pulled below. Hey you kids, get out of that blood water. Pretty much everyone sees and rushes the kids out except Alex's mom, who by process of elimination realizes her son was eaten. Mrs. Kittner is quick to offer a reward for the shark and talk to all the papers to get the word out, and an impromptu town hall meeting is held. Brody announces that the beaches will be closed, which upsets the locals, specifically the business owners. Vaughn immediately cuts the closure to 24 hours, but they're still unhappy. It takes literal nails on a chalkboard to shut them up as the resident shark hunter makes his grand entrance. Simply named Quint, he offers to catch this man-eater by himself, but for no less than $10,000.
$10,000 for me by myself. For that you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing.
He says this is the only way to safely reopen the beach and keep their businesses afloat, but he has just a little too much crazy in his speech to sway the crowd. The signs go up and Brody's extensive shark reading has him so scared he doesn't want his boys anywhere near the water. That night, two fishermen named Charlie and Den Herder try to attract the shark with a dinner roast. And by golly, their stupid plan actually works. It just works a little too well, and the shark pulls half the dock along with it. Ah shit, Charlie, the dock is turning around. He struggles to get back on the dock, but he does narrowly avoid becoming shark chow. Word of Mrs. Kittner's reward has spread far, and tons of locals and out-of-towners have gathered to hunt the shark. Oceanographer Matt Hooper has reached Amity to help the police department, but Brody has his hands full with a whole brigade of idiots with suspect fishing practices. Hooper looks over Chrissy's body and quickly surmises this was no boating accident, it was a big ol' shark. The idiot brigade did manage to catch a shark, and everybody's happy to pose for pictures and announce the beach is safe. Everyone except Hooper, who says the bite radius is smaller than the one on Chrissy's body. Hooper wants to check the tiger shark's digestive system, but Vaughn obviously doesn't want to spill a little boy carcass onto the dock. Mrs. Kittner arrives and gives Brody a good slap as she learned he knew about Chrissy's death and let people swim anyway. Lee Fierro gives a devastating performance and makes us, Brody, and everyone else feel like real shit. Brody still feels like shit through dinner, but his little mimic son helps cheer him up a bit. Hooper shows up with some wine and cops Brody's unfinished dinner before explaining his love of sharks and that the shark they're after is still in the water. He's leaving tomorrow for a residency program, so he wants at least one person to understand the danger. We also learn Brody drowned as a child, so he hates the water and never swims. After a couple more drinks, Brody and Hooper head down to the pier and start cutting open the shark. Just as Hooper suspected, all they find are fish and license plates, but no Alex Kittners. Hooper has a hunch about where they can find the real man-eater, and he gets the reluctant Brody to join him at sea. As they reach the shark's feeding ground, Brody rambles about crime, and the two have some fun banter about their odd life choices. Hooper's fish finder spots something big, and it's the abandoned boat of Ben Gardner, one of the guys on the Idiot Brigade. Hooper gets into his scuba gear to take a closer look at the damage, and he indeed finds evidence of a shark, including a big old tooth and a big old Ben body. Hooper is shooketh, and he and Brody try to warn Vaughn of the great white that has claimed the waters of Amity Island. But once again, he's only concerned with the money that will be lost, and is more concerned with children graffiti artists. Despite their pleas, Vaughn refuses to close the beaches on the July 4th weekend, which starts tomorrow, and the shark bait is literally coming in boatloads. Brody does manage to get a shark patrol going, headed by Hooper, who has decided to stay until the shark is killed. Peter Benchley makes a cameo, as we learn the shark news is still keeping people out of the water. This displeases Vaughn, who bullies one of his friends to get into the water. Yeah, take the kids, why don't ya? What's the worst that could happen? A bunch of stupid people quickly follow suit, but Brody makes Mike and his friends hang out in the pond offshooting the ocean. While Vaughn downplays the recent deaths on the news, a fin joins the aquatic festivities. The lifeguards and shark patrol start herding people out of the water, which quickly turns into a stampede, as the stupids trample over each other. But all the chaos was caused by some sneaky kids with a cardboard fin, so people aren't quick to believe when a woman spots a shark heading into the pond. But it ain't cardboard this time, and it's heading straight for Michael and his friends. This poor guy gets in the way, and we get our first glimpse of the great white as it tears the man apart. The commotion capsizes Michael's boat, but luckily the shark swims off, showing his big beautiful fin to the crowd on his way out. Michael is in shock, but will be okay after some bed rest. Vaughn is now a bumbling fool, only worried about how he'll save his image, and Brody convinces him to hire Quint to kill the shark. He and Hooper visit his digs, and yeah, it's pretty fucking shark themed. Hooper wants to join them on the hunt, but Quint doesn't like Hooper, his fancy gadgets, or his soft city boy hands. Brody talks him into it, but that doesn't mean they have to get along, and Quint continues to make fun of the oceanographer. The Brodys say goodbye, and the three men fittingly head out through some jaws. Brody and Hooper chum while Quint complains about technology and drinks his beer. Brody knocks some shit over, including some apparently explosive compressed air. Quint notices a little tug on the line and calmly straps himself in for a fight, and something starts taking a ton of line. Quint starts working the line back, but he realizes the fish has gone under the boat, which risks the line being cut. Hooper's convinced it's just a tuna or something, and the line snaps. Guess we'll never know. They continue searching for the shark, and it's been slow enough to play some solitaire. Brody starts chumming again, and he sees they have the great white's attention.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
They estimate the shark to be 25 feet and 3 tons, and he is circling the boat. Quint is ready to get serious, and they harpoon a barrel and strobe onto the shark. They follow the barrel, which usually tires the shark out to bring it to the surface, but the big boy descends and brings it down with it. They're waiting for the barrel to resurface, and the sun starts to set. Hooper and Quint bond over comparing shark bites, and they're getting pretty tipsy. Quint explains he was on the USS Indianapolis, a real-life military cruiser that was sunk during World War II. Around 900 Navy men were adrift at sea for 4 days, and amongst the other deadly elements, many were killed by sharks, with only 300 survivors. He shares his memories of friends disappearing and being bitten in half, and the gripping tale helps ground Quint's fixation with killing sharks. The three drunks break out into song just as the shark returns. He starts rocking the boat, busting up the shaft in the process. The electricity cuts out, and Quint starts firing some shots at the beast. That mythical shooting star flies by, and the boys are trying to fix up the orca. The barrel returns to the surface, and while they try to pull the rope in, the shark drops by for a jump scare. The rope has been cut, and Brody decides enough is enough and tries to contact the Coast Guard. Quint doesn't want any more help taking down his own white whale and destroys the radio, which Brody is pretty pissed about. The shark circles the boat some more, and Quint shoots another barrel into him. Some classic John Williams plays as the boys give chase to the great white and they're able to attach a second barrel. Even Brody gets some hits on the big boy. They get a hold of the ropes and tie the shark to the orca, and Hooper nearly gets bifurcated. Their plan to pull the shark to shore isn't working out as he is stronger than the orca and the pullers become the pulleys. The boat starts filling up with water and Quint releases the shark, but Bruce doesn't plan on giving them even a moment to rest. Even with 3 barrels attached, the humongous shark is able to descend and Quint is shocked at his power and intelligence. They head towards Amity in the hopes of capturing the shark in the shallows, but Quint pushes the orca too hard and blows the engine, making them a sitting, sinking duck. Quint is finally willing to consider Hooper's ideas, which is to poison the shark from inside his anti-shark cage. They assemble the cage and Hooper suits up and gets inside. They crank him down and friendly Bruce says hello to his new roommate. The shark sneak attacks Hooper and he drops the poison stick. The shark starts making mincemeat out of the cage and nearly snags Hooper, who gives the shark some face stabs. He's able to escape the cage unharmed and swims over to a reef to hide, while the shark is tangled up with the cage. The weight of the shark snaps the pulley, but they're able to crank the cage up anyway. But from what they can tell, Hooper has become lunch. Sharky is done playing games and just belly flops his way onto the aft, making the boat go diagonal and sending Quint down into the jaws of the great white. He puts up a valiant effort, but Sharky chomps down on the sailor and pulls him down to his death. The orca is going down with its captain and the shark bursts into the hull to eat Brody. All he gets is a can of compressed air and Brody loads up and climbs the mast for one final showdown. It's gonna take more than some weak ass pokes though, Brody. The shark luckily still has the tank in his mouth and Brody lines up his shot. He misses a few times but ultimately lands the shot and Bruce blows the fuck up. Brody screams with excitement and the shark carcass descends to the sea floor. Oh hey Hooper, nice of you to rejoin the party. They have a chuckle and Brody tells him Quint didn't make it. The movie ends with Brody and Hooper paddling home, with Brody having a newfound appreciation for the ocean. And that's Jaws. It's a pretty damn good movie, and it's probably my favorite Spielberg film. I definitely have a higher appreciation for the performances now that I'm a bit older. It's very hard to just have your characters goofing around for an extended scene and not have it feel like a waste of time. But I can't get enough of Brody, Hooper, and Quint. The three just constantly compete to steal the scene and they just bring the best out of each other's work. Jaws has been written about and studied since its release, and there are so many different themes and influences within this supposed shark movie. Critics have found Bruce to represent communism, the death of the nuclear family, and most simply, plain old fear itself. There are only a handful of movies I can think of that came out before Jaws where a central plot point was large groups of people being afraid to do something that they usually do every day, and that fear obviously translated to audiences as people were afraid of their own swimming pools back in the day after watching Jaws. The stark contrast between Quint and Hooper is a bit heavy-handed at times, but it still avoids being super generic. All three men have very specific viewpoints and their squabbles subliminally deal with issues of class, education, and morality. But as I said, there are people who are way more educated on the subject of Jaws, and there's definitely places you can find thematic deep dives. Bruce admittedly looks a little clunky once in a while, but for it to look that good in 1975, I can't think of a better looking shark, with or without CGI. The underwater shots look great and are probably the most innovative ones since the creature from the Black Lagoon. The daytime night shots look a little weird sometimes, but I think they mostly add to the vast, otherworldly presence the ocean represents in this movie. The movie is paced really well. There's only one or two transitions that I think are a little funky, but I'm mostly just nitpicking when it comes to those. The build-up every time the shark arrives is fantastic, and the deaths never feel cheap or unimportant. John Williams' score is fucking impressive, and it's something I'd have to ponder, but I might consider it the best film score of all time. The score and basically every aspect of Jaws has been so ingrained in filmmaking and culture, it's been mimicked so many times. Jaws turned watching movies into an event. It was something people would look forward to way in advance. It's something you'd be willing to wait in a long ass line around the block for. I think it has a wonderful mix of artful filmmaking and fun, all-American entertainment. I can't imagine many of you haven't seen Jaws, but if not, I recommend it. It's an absolute classic and definitely deserves to be. Well, that's about it. Next week will be our final creature feature of the summer, and it's one of my personal favorites. We're watching 1988's Pumpkinhead. Thank you all for joining me, and extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and this has been Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Jaws. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with my weekly horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks, y'all.